Today we're diving into a story that really gets to the core of what it means to be the world's largest democracy. There are some incredibly serious accusations being thrown around about the integrity of the 2024 Haryana election, and it's kicked off a huge debate about trust, transparency, and really the nuts and bolts of how a fair vote is supposed to work. All right, let's get into it.
So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the explosive allegation itself. Then, we'll unpack the official response and this crisis of trust that's emerged. We're also going to clear up the super important difference between secrecy and transparency, check out the tools we have to actually verify an election, and finally, explore a proposal for how to rebuild faith in the whole system.
So, where did all of this start? Well, it kicked off with an absolute bombshell of a claim from the leader of the opposition, Rahul Gandhi, centered on the Haryana Assembly election.
Now just let that number sink in for a second. 25 lakh. That's 2.5 million votes. To give you some perspective, that's about 1 out of every 8 registered voters in the entire state of Haryana. We're not talking about a small clerical error here. This is an accusation of a massive systemic problem.
So how do you even get to a number like 25 lakh? Well, the analysis that was presented broke it down. For starters, it claimed that over 500,000 voters, 5.21 lakh to be exact, were duplicates. That means the same person might have been registered to vote more than once.
And it doesn't stop there. On top of the duplicates, the analysis pointed to over 93,000 voters who were just classified as invalid, which suggests they probably shouldn't have been on the voter rolls in the first place.
And this is where it gets kind of weird. The claim also flags nearly 125,000 voters because their photos on the electoral rolls were either super blurry or allegedly completely fake.
And to really drive this point home, they pulled out a pretty wild example. To make this data feel real, the analysis highlighted this one specific bizarre case. A photo of a Brazilian model, just grabbed from the internet, was apparently used for 22 different voters in Haryana. I mean, it's a memorable, almost absurd image that really paints a picture of just how messy these voter rolls could be.
Okay, so with accusations like these flying around, you'd expect a strong response, right? Well, the Election Commission of India, or the ECI, did respond. But that response has, in many ways, only deepened the divide.
It's like two different conversations happening at once. On one side, you have these huge allegations of systemic failure, messy data, even potential collusion. And on the other side, the ECI's defense is very procedural. They're essentially saying, hey, there are specific timelines for these complaints, and you need to file a formal petition after the election. Now, while that might be procedurally correct, it doesn't really tackle the core accusation of widespread errors head-on.
And that right there is the real problem, isn't it? Because no matter who's technically right on procedure, this whole exchange has created a serious and growing trust deficit. When the public hears about fake voters and the official response is about filing the right paperwork on time, it can make the system feel defensive and opaque instead of transparent and accountable.
You know, this entire controversy really boils down to one fundamental principle that seems to have gotten a little bit muddled: the critical difference between what must be secret in an election and what absolutely must be transparent.
Let's be crystal clear about this. Ballot secrecy is sacred. It's a cornerstone of democracy, but it protects one thing and one thing only: your choice. Who you voted for, that's it. That's your private business.
But everything else, the entire process, that's a different story. That falls under transparency. The list of who is eligible to vote and, crucially, the proof of who actually walked in and voted, that has to be an open, public record. If it's not, you can't actually prove an election was legitimate.
And this is where we get to the heart of the matter. In the past, the ECI has restricted access to key verification tools, like the video footage from inside polling booths, and they've cited voter privacy and secrecy. But critics argue that this is a misuse of the idea of ballot secrecy. It kind of creates a shield of opaqueness over the very process that's supposed to be transparent.
All right, so if transparency is the goal, what tools do we actually have in our toolkit to verify an election's integrity and get to the bottom of these kinds of claims?
This is the million-dollar question, right? How can you prove that the election was fair, that millions of fake votes weren't cast, without ever compromising the secrecy of an individual's actual vote?
Well, the answer is actually pretty straightforward. You use the process data. The simplest way is to just make the records public. Show the video from every polling booth. You can see who came in, not who they voted for.
release the marked electoral rolls. That's the list where an official ticks off your name when you vote. Giving open access to this kind of information is the most direct way to prove who voted and who didn't.
Okay, this brings us to the final and honestly the most important part of this whole discussion. What's a potential path forward to try and restore some of that trust in the system?
The solution being proposed is simple in its principle, even if it's complex to execute. The core argument is that the best, and maybe the only way to quiet these fears is to commit to a kind of radical transparency. Make everything about the process public while fiercely protecting just one thing, the voter's actual choice.
So what does that look like in the real world? Well, here's a 4-step plan. 1. Publish the marked electoral rolls for everyone to see. 2. Release the video footage from all the polling booths. 3. Make this access a matter of law, not just a choice, so it's guaranteed. And 4. At every step, reinforce that absolute, unbreakable secrecy is maintained for the vote itself. This basically puts the burden of proof back on the process by making it verifiable for anyone who wants to check.
So this leaves us with a huge final question. In our current digital age, an age full of misinformation and really deep political divides, where trust in our institutions is maybe lower than ever, is this kind of radical transparency the only real path forward to protect our elections? It's a question that's not just for India, but for every single democracy that's grappling with these exact same challenges.